learningseo.io for SEO reporting. Our today's session is going to tackle the major doubts, questions, challenges that we face when we do SEO reporting. For today's edition, Sophie Brannon, who's a very well-known and experienced SEO specialist who has tons of insights to share with us in order to tackle in an effective way SEO reporting, is joining us. Hello, Sophie. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you so much, Aleda, and everyone for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this topic. It's one I'm super passionate about and love speaking about. So yeah, really excited to dive in.
Likewise, I have to say that this is one of those topics that I know that for many SEOs is not necessarily the most appealing one, but for me is one of the most important, critical, fundamental that I love to tackle because realistically, it can have a huge impact in our work. SEO reporting. Let's start with the concept, right? I know that many of you have seen in the past that SEO reporting is conceptually, let's say, covered as if it was an SEO dashboard, right? Or a set of documents that you export from a tool many times and send to the client or to your bosses and forget about it every month or with a certain frequency. And it shouldn't be necessarily like that. SEO reports should be one of those, let's say, outputs and information that you deliver in whatever format, in the format that can be the easiest to consume to the decision makers, to the stakeholders, to those different audiences and people who are involved in the SEO process, for you to inform what is going on, how you have advanced or not, how things are evolving based on what they actually care about. Because of course, as we have seen in the past, especially in the SEO measurement session that we had already, the C-level, the director of the company will care about very likely on the most business related stuff. If you have hit your revenue goals at this point of the process, they won't necessarily be really keen or willing to understand what's going on with a crawlability issue that you might have in and want to inform about necessarily. That is not the right person. So your SEO report will be the perfect document for you to inform about how you have achieved, in the case of decision makers that are non-technical, the business related goals. What are the efforts that you are doing that are paying off and are achieving what you expect? Which are those things that are not being executed because of constraints, restrictions, problems, and you need their support to make things happen? What are the results that you are not getting at all or not achieving at all because there's a lack of support, because maybe stuff that you plan at the beginning of the process is not really performing as you expected, because this stuff also happens in SEO, right? But the importance here is not only to say, oh, we have failed to achieve this goal that we had projected at this point of the process, and that's it. No. What is important here is that you say, we are failing to achieve this, and here are two other ways that we can execute to achieve these things by executing X or Y, because yeah, it's not working out as we expected, but here are workarounds, or here are other channels or other activities that can allow us to achieve that goal. What it is important here is that we see then SEO reports as a way to communicate what is going on and to influence to achieve what we want, because it should also explain not only what has happened in the past, but what do you expect or want to happen next, right? And so having clarified that, I am going to start by asking Sophie, who's joining on here, usually which are, let's say, the most common errors that you see SEOs, even experienced SEOs, having when developing and creating and sending SEO reports, handling SEO reports in general?
Yeah, I think there's quite a few of these. And as you kind of alluded to already, Aleda, reporting isn't sexy. It's an admin part of SEO. It's possibly a boring part of SEO when it comes to summarizing what you've done that month, or kind of trying to get buy-in for different projects and things like that. But some of the most common errors that I see all the time in SEO reporting is too much jargon, too much SEO speak. Now, it's really important whenever you're doing an SEO report that you're actually writing it for the person who's receiving it. You're actually really tailoring it to, if it's an SEO manager that you're sending it to, making sure that it's actually in their language and it's in as much depth as it needs to be for that particular person. Whereas if it's a business owner, they're not going to know what any kind of crawlability error is. They're not going to know what a log file analysis is. They're not going to know or really care about any of that kind of stuff. They want to know what impacts bottom line. So if you're sending a report with loads of jargon, loads of data, and again, that's another one, data and information overload, just too much info, too much stuff that means absolutely nothing, and it's all meaningless metrics, that's where you're going to lose that person. Your report should always be completely tailored to who's receiving it, and it should include the metrics that matter the most. And there's different ways you can do that. Like, for example, making sure you don't have a confusing layout. Again, another really big error that people make in SEO reporting. You've got all of this data, all of this information, and it's not laid out in a very clear way. It means absolutely nothing to the person that's receiving it. Or on the other hand, you haven't got enough data. You're focusing on just one metric, just one thing, when there's all of this bigger picture that could actually show all of the work that you're doing and all of the fantastic results that you're achieving, and you're not really talking about it, you're not showcasing it. So just making sure that you haven't got enough, or haven't got too much jargon, you haven't got too much information, you're causing information overload, but equally you haven't got too little information that you're not really selling yourself, you're not really showcasing the work that you're doing.
This is great. I also have to say that many times I have seen SEO reports that include the metrics that are generated by default by SEO tools. Mm-hmm. Yes, that speaking and connecting this topic with the one that we had a couple of weeks ago with SEO measurement, right? So it's important that you collect the right data with the right KPIs at different levels, those that you know that the decision maker will care about, the ones related with visibility share versus competitors in the market, or revenue and conversion for different product lines, things like that, generated by organic traffic, things like that. And then those are the metrics that you gather from a technical standpoint, the crawlability, indexability, that have to do and are connected with efforts that you're doing with the development team. These are the ones that you are going to share with the developer or the technical director, or with those decision makers that are in the development area collaborating with you and supporting you and care about those in particular, and that you gather the ones that, for example, have to do with content, how much organic search, traffic, rankings, conversions, whatever conversion has been set for that type of content, has the blog brought in the last month versus what had been projected, or versus the previous month, or year over year, if you had a goal to grow an X% year over year. So you can share with the editorial team or the content team and see if it is growing as you had expected, and those efforts are paying off. So my point here is that it's fundamental that whatever you report is connected with goals that you have with that particular area. And these are, or in your reports, you actually communicate the evolution of those, of your activities towards the goals that you have set in terms that they understand. Yeah. And as Sophie mentioned, rather than trying to, the more the merrier, right? Like, I'm going to do this huge report because it's going to be very impressive for my boss to go through 20 pages. They are not going to read 20 pages. Mm-hmm. They're not going to read 10 or 5, and they are not going to understand half of that. And just because you want to impress them with all of these terms that they don't understand, it is going to be worse, because they won't be able to understand what the why is so important, what you have been doing, and what do you need to keep advancing or to achieve what the goals that you have set, right? So this is fundamental. This is why it's important to, rather than thinking, oh, I have seen a beautiful report, which is, I have to say that it's another mistake, trying to make it look super beautiful without thinking if it is really usable and easy to understand, right? Like it can be like the prettiest report, but this doesn't actually easily inform in a simple graphic. Many times you don't even need a graphic. You just need a number and the comparison versus the previous period that you wanted to compare it with, that you want to show the growth with, for example, year over year. And you don't need a fancy graphic that many times makes the people to double question what you're trying, like if you're reading it in the right way, if you're understanding way. So if you see a super cool graphic, but this graphic doesn't clarify, doesn't make clear if you are achieving whatever you want with that metric or not, it's pointless. Don't use it, change it, because it can be pretty, it can look sophisticated, but it's not helping you to communicate what you want. And many times it doesn't need to be a graphic. It can be a table with numbers showing in red what has decreased and in green the numbers that have increased, and the percentage of increase or decrease. Doesn't need to be a cool graphic, because many times, indeed, I have seen that SEO reports are killed and they make it completely like so difficult and impossible to understand just because of the fanciness of the graphics, right?
That's exactly it. And it's almost like you need to get out of the mindset of being an SEO and using the methods that you understand. It's okay, I'm reporting to a business owner. What matters to them, and how does this metric that I'm showing them match that business objective? And how can I display that in a way that they're going to easily understand? Is that revenue? Is that conversions? Rather than here's this awesome, impressive impression share graph that looks so pretty and it looks like it's going up, but it means absolutely nothing to the person that it's going to. So yeah, it's really just that clarity aspect. It's all part of that communication.
So for that, what I will highly also recommend is to understand what is the easiest format for each one of them to read. And the best way many times is just to ask them, what do you want that I send you an email telling you like the highlights, the 3 points of what we have done and what we have achieved or not. And based on that, what we can expect next, or what do we need next? Just an email. It doesn't need to be a fancy deck or a fancy doc or a Google Sheet. No, it doesn't need to be that, right? So ask the person who you are going to be working with what will be the preferred format, because many times it can be something super simple. If you're working in a project management tool, for example, it can be through the project management tool text option or documentation option that it has, sending that recurrent monthly report, for example, or sometimes it can be even be through Jira, for example, or just a Google slide with 3 slides, 5 slides, and that's it. My point here, you don't need to spend 5 days per month building something that many times it won't be read if it is too complicated, or it is in a format that is not easy to access or to go through by the person that you are going to be informing to, right? So it is fundamental that you confirm what is the preferred format, that is something straightforward for them, so you achieve the goal of communication. That is the most straightforward thing. Another important thing here, I will say, is the frequency of SEO reports. Many times, and it's the other way around, we need to be reasonable. If you ask your client, how often do you want SEO reports? They will say every week, but they don't even release every week stuff. They release stuff two times per month. So it's ridiculous that you will be informing of advancements every week. Like, you're not even releasing stuff that often. And we know that SEO takes time to have any effects, right? So a monthly frequency, I will say, is the most reasonable one in order to keep track of things. That doesn't mean that you won't be monitoring more often. Of course, this to inform decision makers and other areas that also need to keep up with what's going on, right? So having clarified a little bit of the do's and don'ts, Sophie, what would you say are those key elements that you will always tend to include in an SEO reports, and those elements that you many times have seen that are included, but you wouldn't prioritize necessarily?
Yeah, so in terms of what I would always report on, some top level metrics that I find are valuable, regardless of the industry, regardless of who you're reporting to, is probably organic traffic and goal conversions. So whether that's revenue, whether that's leads, whether that's more kind of micro conversions, such as email signups, whatever that kind of overarching campaign and business objective is, always match the metric to that. I also always like to have that comparison aspect. So whether that's year on year, I personally do prefer year on year if you've got that data available, because it accounts for things like seasonality and things that month on month may not actually give a very clear picture. It's much easier to do that year on year. Also, things like branded versus unbranded traffic growth, I think that's very important to include, just because it gives a bit more of a general picture of, okay, your brand's improving, your brand's growing in visibility, but look at all these other terms we're capturing around your services or around your products, or around some long tail keywords that we've been targeting with the blog. It just gives that much bigger visibility picture. And then I think the most important factor that I would always include in an SEO report is an insights and recommendations section. So just a bit of a write-up about what those metrics actually mean. And the way I kind of see that is, your data is the what. This is what's happened. This is what we've achieved or potentially not achieved. The insights is the why. This is why this has happened or why this hasn't happened. So that could then give you an opportunity to talk about things like, okay, I wasn't able to achieve a growth in traffic or achieve this particular project or anything like that this month. But that's because we had a hold up with the dev team, or we couldn't get sign off on X, Y, and Z things as quickly as what we expected. But here's that workaround to that, or here's when we are expecting to see this happen. And then the recommendations is almost what we're going to do about it, and that is that workaround aspect. So you've got your what, your why, and the what we're going to do about it afterwards as well. So I just really think those top level metrics, whether that's traffic, goal completions, whatever matches that business objective, a comparison, whether that's year on year, month on month versus previous period, regardless of what that is, it just gives you a benchmark to compare against. And then the insights and recommendations to give you that opportunity to write it up. So yeah, always just include that. And again, that annotations aspect is just so important, and it gives you that opportunity to really focus on that communication, rather than just giving a client or giving a stakeholder just numbers that don't really mean anything. It gives them a much bigger picture and a much easier way for you to communicate, especially if you don't get a chance to go through that report with them. They're able to see everything right there on that piece of paper.
100%. So this is funny because it also connects with the other question that has been asked here regarding what sections, elements should every SEO report include, and what do you find is the best format? At the end of the day, this is all about informing and communicating about how are you doing versus the set goals of the SEO process. So whatever helps you to explain how are you doing for the goals that you have set that are important to that decision maker, include it. If it doesn't help you, doesn't include it, because many people think, it's because the tool doesn't only provide me the rankings, but also provide me the impressions, also provide me the share of voice, also provide me all of these extra metrics that they don't add up much and only adds noise, right? Eliminate them. Only leave those metrics, those KPIs in this case, key performance indicators, that will allow you to explain how is your SEO process achieving or not what you have said. An improvement in crawlability of your pages, the indexability of your pages, show that. An increase of indexability of the meant to be indexed pages of 200% versus the last 6 months, because you started in January and now is June, and your goal at this point will have been half of that. So you're overachieving. Amazing. So explain that you're overachieving thanks to this initiative that were done even faster than what you expected. And since you are already achieving that, you want to allocate the resources to these other activities, or the other way around. You had as a goal to improve your organic search traffic from your X product line or your Y category into 100%, but you're behind. You haven't been able to grow 200% year over year, but only 50% year over year. You need to show then not the indexability metrics or the crawlability metrics for that report or that section of the report, but you need to show your organic search traffic growth year over year and how you are not growing versus the 200% that you had expected, and the why you haven't achieved the goal at this point. Oh, because we were not able to improve the content of the categories 4 months ago as we had planned, and we had just released those changes. Oh, because all of these subcategories were supposed to be indexed, and you haven't been able to change the meta robots because of blockage of the development team. So you need to explain the why, and then explain how, like Sophie mentioned, you intend to move forward to tackle those challenges to achieve the result. Or in order to be able to actually achieve the result that we had, well, and keep up, we recommend to actually get the support to change the meta robots, because it's something that we know is doable. It's only the approval of the development head of web development that we need. So we need your help. Thank you very much to do that, the first thing. And then on the other hand, because we're behind, then we will need to implement now what we expected to implement in 6 months, this and this other improvement. The blog, on the product pages, on all of these other pages that we were not supposed to do now, but in 6 months. But since we're behind, we need to be able to push those forward right now if we want to see the goals at the end of the year. If you don't approve me that, then don't expect that we achieve the goal. So what it is important here is that the decision maker, the client, sees that you're on top of things, that you know what you're talking about, that you know how things are going, that you are honest, and you communicate straightforward. Don't try to manipulate things, trying to make it look like if it's all going good when it is not. This will only backlash at the end of the day. What it is important is that you're honest, and they see that you're honest. And what it is important is that, oh, things are not working well. It's all SEO fault. Very likely it's not going to necessarily be only your fault, but it's an execution issue or challenge. It's, let's say, the fault of the overall organization because of one way or another, or because all the context simply is not the fault of anybody necessarily, right? So what you need and what is important here is that you show that you have the capacity to change the situation. And for that, you're proposing this and that and those actions to be done right away or at this pace now. So it shows that you're proposing something, that you are proactive, that you know that you are on top of things, and there are ways to achieve the goals, because at the end of the day, this is what matters here. Achieving the goals, achieving the revenue, whatever goal has been set, whatever conversion has been set for the process, that is achieved. And the SEO reports should help you to communicate how that is going. And if it's not going well, then to propose change and communicate change, right? So what Sophie mentioned before about explaining that what happened, why did it happen, and how to proceed. This is pretty much storytelling in action, right? The setup, the conflict, and the resolution. Leverage this very straightforward framework, right? What happened? Oh, we did X or Y, and unfortunately, the results that we're having from organic search rankings and traffic is X rather than X++. Why did it happen? It happened like this because we didn't launch all of this, but half of it. How to proceed? Oh, because we have only launched half of it. Now we need to get really quick to launch the rest the next month. And not only that, we need to accelerate the implementation of this other stuff that we had planned to be implemented in 6 months. That's it. Like that, we'll be able to achieve the goals that we wanted. And for each goal that you had set in your SEO process, and explain with the metrics that actually help to explain that the goal achievement, that particular goal achievement, right? So the best format will be the format that is easier to understand by the audience. Many times for the CEO of the company or the decision maker, it might be even a simpler email. For the other stakeholders of the team, it might be a very straightforward, simple presentation of 5 slides maximum, 3 slides maximum explaining this, building a case, and that's it. So it might be the formats might be different. Ask what they prefer and what is easier for them to understand, and explain this very clearly. What happened, why did it happen, and how to proceed for the goal that matters to each one of them. And this is pretty much like the base of a successful SEO report, right there, right? There's another question that I believe that is also very, very important to tackle here, regarding what do you do when you have setbacks in this communication, right? How do you deal when the SEO performance is not the one agreed? And of course, well, we are in the best case scenarios here that you show different alternatives of how to actually improve the situation. But how do you tend to handle this, Sophie? Because we know that the ideal scenario with the client will be understandable and will say, oh, it's true, it has been actually the fault of my lack of resources, of lack of support. Let's fix it, right? But many times it's not like that necessarily, right? Like, how do you deal with this?
So I think the first and most important thing here is that if something's going wrong or something's not going as expected, the report that you're sending at the end of the month or the end of the quarter or whatever that time period isn't the first time that the client hears about that. You should always be honest, transparent, and upfront about absolutely everything with the client. And I feel like there's always a bit of almost a feeling that a client is a villain, or that they're not going to understand, and that they're going to be completely unreasonable. But most of the time when you are upfront with a client about stuff, that isn't the case. They are just humans as well on the other side of the phone or the other side of the email. Like, they will have some form of understanding about why this has happened, or what you've been facing, whether that is internal resources and things like that. So once you've kind of got to that point of not having necessarily a conflict with the client about it, because you've already been honest, you've already been upfront and transparent, it's working out, okay, how can we pivot the strategy? How can we pivot or use what resources we have available to move the needle in the fastest possible way? And it's really highlighting and almost drawing that strategy back almost to basics and going, okay, we tried X, Y, and Z things. This hasn't worked out because of X, Y, and Z reasons. So let's pull that back. What are we looking to achieve? How can we achieve it in the fastest possible way with the resources we have at hand? And then redraw out that strategy based on all of these different factors and work together with the client on that and really look at what is reasonable. Because a lot of the time as well, and again, this is where a lot of these issues do come about, is as SEOs, we go, here's a website, here's the most ideal strategy, and we're just going to roll with it, rather than looking at what resource we have available or where those potential barriers are going to come in. We tend to just jump ahead because we're excited. We know the amazing possibilities of what we're going to have if we can achieve all these results afterwards. So take things back to the drawing board, speak directly with the client, be honest, be transparent, and say, okay, let's scale it back. What's going to move the needle the fastest? What kind of things are we going to be able to actually implement quickly to get us to where we want to be? And sometimes that does mean looking and re-looking at your business objectives or the campaign goals and saying, okay, maybe a 20, 30, 50% increase was actually an unreasonable objective to start with. Let's pull that back. Maybe let's look at a 10 or 15% and see where we can go from there. Or say, okay, maybe the low-hanging fruit isn't in revenue and goal completion straight away. Maybe it is brand visibility, or it's traffic, or it's about driving more kind of sessions or traffic through to the blog section of the site rather than our main service pages because the competition is too high and you haven't got the budget to be able to maximize on that. So it is just a matter of readjusting strategy, I think.
100%. So in fact, I have to say something, right? Thinking about it, I can understand that the situations, in fact, in which your boss or your client will end up getting mad by negative results are those situations in which you were not clear enough since the beginning, that you were not honest at the beginning, right? Like when you set the goals that you say, okay, there are different scenarios and these are projections or forecasts, but there's always stuff that can happen. A Google update, your competitor releasing much more than you, or having an amazing campaign or something extraordinary that they launch, and while you don't, right? And so it's important to set reasonable expectations at the start of the process when you're setting the goals. This is always important. And then when you see that something is not working out right from the beginning, you need to communicate that. Because again, your client or your boss will get mad if you end up including that or making that obvious in the SEO report after 6 months, when nothing can be done about it, when the year is already finishing and there's no room to change the strategy anymore, right? But if you already identify a pattern of something not working out as you expected, not necessarily because of your fault, but because the executions are not as fast, because you release something, but all of a sudden, an example, you release something that has to do, that you expected to improve the click-through rate because structured data related implementations that will generate positive impact in rich snippets, and all of a sudden Google is not showing those rich snippets anymore. These things are stuff that you couldn't expect, that you couldn't project in the first place. And if you see right away that this is happening, what it is important is that you include that in your report, in the next report, and you give the heads up to your client and that they are informed. They cannot be mad at you for that because that is out of your hands, right? You couldn't have prevented that, but you spot that right away and offer an alternative, offer different strategies, different tactics, different options to achieve the result. So as long as you are prompt, that you are quick to identify the issue and communicate it, and you offer options and alternatives, they shouldn't be mad. They tend to be mad when you don't do the work that you should have, and you stay quiet, or you don't say anything, or you don't pay attention, and you inform about it after months when there's nothing that you can do anymore, right? So this is why it is so important to be proactive, to monitor what matters, to pay attention on what matters, and to be honest and be really quick to inform your client while presenting alternatives. Because if you do that, they cannot be mad at that, because they will see that you're doing what you're supposed to do. You're identifying opportunities and challenges, and you're offering options to achieve the results in one way or another. And that many times it's not up to you. It's the lack of support of X or Y team, or it's because an update that couldn't have been forecasted or projected, right? There is this question regarding, do you tend to include information about external factor that could be impacting SEO performance? Yes, you include anything that is negatively or positively impacting the performance that you projected. Oh, amazing. There was a campaign, a new clothing line. Maybe you're working in a clothing with a clothing brand, or there was this clothing new line that was released now, you didn't take that necessarily into account in your projections, and all of a sudden has generated tons of branded searches, and that is allowing you to achieve your overall organic search traffic improvement year over year. Amazing. It's important that you explain that too. Okay, this is helping us in a way that we didn't expect it. We are going to eliminate and filter out this traffic too, to see like the actual performance versus what we actually projected though. But you show that is positively impacting, right? Oh, there was this core update that has negatively impacted our pages because they are very informational, and now Google is giving visibility to more commercial related pages, and we don't have commercial pages yet. We need to improve them still, right? Stuff like that. What it is important is that whatever you need to include, whatever metric or whatever information that will help you to inform your client, internal or external, right? Like that is why it's important that you measure the right metrics that help you understand the why of your performance, right? This is very important. Then another question that we have here is also regarding how personalized or granular this should be. So here's a question specifically about some clients focus on a specific metric or specific group of keywords or queries. In this case, it is valuable to create a complete SEO report for a unique strategy, such as improving the rankings for a specific keyword or an article. I mean, I believe that a specific article, a specific keyword shouldn't necessarily be a major goal. It should be part of something. So all of the informational queries that should be targeted by the blog, right? I wouldn't rely the success of my SEO process on a single.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? That is something that I will never advise to do, because literally, like, there are many more ways very likely to achieve the goals that you want for that. But yes, what would you say, Sophie, that is the level of granularity, or the different level of granularities that you think are reasonable to end up having in your reports?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I would never just track a single keyword or just a single URL. And I think there's a bigger education piece that needs to kind of happen, and a discussion with the client around that, and why we wouldn't want to do that, and all of the variables that are kind of included within that form of measurement. But I also do think that having a really personalized report is important. You should be showing the client exactly what they want to see. But then also including the metrics that feed into that as well. So if they do want to see a specific keyword or a specific group of keywords, and you've tried the education piece, some people are very stubborn. Some people don't always like to say, okay, fine, we won't just look at that keyword. They still probably want to see that keyword. But you may also want to include other metrics that relate to that. So semantic variations of that keyword, or that particular page traffic that's being driven by that group of terms, or overarching traffic or overarching visibility alongside that particular keyword. So I'd always just keep it as granular as makes sense based on those business objectives. If the business objective is, I want to increase traffic, I want to increase overall visibility in search, I want to increase all of my keyword rankings, fantastic, report on that. But if they also say, but I also want to track exactly this particular keyword, maybe you should include it as well, but have that discussion, have that education piece about why we wouldn't necessarily want to track a particular keyword or URL, because there's just so much potential to go wrong. Different devices, different locations, different browsers, personalization in search. There's so many different reasons why we wouldn't want to.
This, when we want to position ourselves as the experts at the end of the day, it's like, okay, and the key question here is why? Why do you want me to report with this metric? Why do you want me to focus on that? Oh, because I care about X or Y. Okay, these are different ways to do it.
Yeah.
Offer different ways to do it. What is important is that you understand the need that they need to fulfill, because many times they will need to fulfill something with not necessarily the best metric, not necessarily in the best way, right? So I remember that many years ago, I was working with this decision maker who they didn't care about necessarily the rankings, but they were obsessed with the organic search traffic, and yeah, only focus on that. Even if I included all the metrics, like, they only see that and the communication from the reports, and the traffic was down many times because of seasonality, or like or lower search trend, because of, there were certain groups of terms that were less popular from time to time, and there were others that were more, that for which they were not ranking as well. But they were completely focused on traffic, and they're like, why are we doing worse than last month or the last 2 months? Like, because we're in summer, and every year these summer months are lower in traffic because of seasonality. But there's nothing wrong. Take a look at the rankings. We're still ranking the same way. Take a look at year over year. We're still growing 30% year over year. And the thing is that, is a lower month in traffic every year, the one of August. Okay. Right? But because they focus completely on traffic and they didn't see the other metrics that I included, that is why they ended up always asking, right? After a while, they understood. And it's like, this is why, and this is when you need to explain and evangelize. And this is why I don't only include you the traffic metric, but I also include you the rankings and the click-through rate and the search trend. And so they understand. And then this is why you want to explain. You don't want to only include the KPIs, and that's it. You need to explain them. If you only send the KPIs, 30% year-over-year decrease, 30% year-over-year increase. So it's like they will make their mind however they want to understand what that means. Explain that. Make it, don't make them think, right? Remember, like, there's a book on usability about don't make me think. It's like, don't make them think. Tell them how they should read it, right? This means that seasonality is down and then it's reasonable, then the traffic gets down, but that doesn't mean that we're going worse. In fact, there's a year-over-year increase of 30% when we projected only 20%. So we're overachieving by 10% the projection. Explain it all. Be descriptive, be specific. Don't assume that they will understand.
Absolutely.
The more specific, the more descriptive you can be, the best will be, right? Yeah. Don't be lazy on this, because many of us are too lazy and say, here you have, or growth. Perfect, 30% year-over-year. Like, what does that mean? Why? Like, you need to explain it. You need to describe it and describe the what, the why it has happened, and how to proceed next. What does that mean for the goals achievement, right? So yes. So to start wrapping up our today's session, time has passed very, very quickly. Sophie, I don't know if there's any last tip and advice regarding SEO reporting that you would like to share with the audience before finishing this session.
Yeah, I just think, just to reiterate on kind of what we've spoken about already today, the biggest things is personalizing the report, making sure it's tailored to the person who's receiving it, and getting out of our SEO brains and thinking, okay, I'm a business owner. What do I want to see? Is it matching the business objectives? And again, always include the insights and the recommendations and explaining the why, and elaborating on what Aleida was just saying. Even if it's, okay, we've seen growth because there's been a Google algorithm update. What does that mean? That doesn't mean anything to a normal person who doesn't do SEO. Like, let's talk and dive deeper. Always dive deeper into that data. And as Aleida says, don't let them think. Just give them everything they need, all within that write-up, within the insights, within the recommendations, and cover everything. Don't just confuse them with numbers and metrics and things that doesn't really mean anything to them. Match it up to the objectives, and always explain.
Thank you very much for all the wealth of advice, Sophie. I really appreciate it. I hope that you have liked today's session. And of course, if you like today's session, remember to subscribe to the Learning SEO channel in YouTube and be alerted of new sessions that we are going to have next of every SEO topic covered by Learning SEO. Really appreciate your time. Have an amazing day. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.